Record. All right, start. Here we go. We got people jumping in. Here we go. All right. Give everybody a few minutes to jump in,
For
log
sure.
in, all the fun stuff. So, just like before, if you are excited about networking with other recruiters that are excited about growing and rocking the year, make sure to drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat. Make sure it's for everyone and not just me and David. There's also a way to make sure that I actually have the chat working since I have to reset it every single time. Because the first one, I definitely ended up breaking it, and everybody was sitting there in the Q&A just like, hey, chat's broken, chat's broken. There we go. Daniel, thank you. And I know that this has been an awesome week so far. I've been getting the messages, I've been seeing the messages. Um, I am excited. One, you know, Juicebox is a presenting sponsor of Rock the Year. They're helping make this happen. But we just now have hit over 1,000 people have registered for Rock the Year. And I know a lot of people with the way the summit's broken up, we have something like 30 plus speakers. People are picking and choosing which speakers they want to go to, which is absolutely awesome. You know what you need to grow. So it has just been exciting to watch like just so many different people coming to all the talks. But first of all, one of the biggest things I'm excited about in the next like, in the future of recruiting is I truly believe that we can have like the single person million to $5 million recruiter coming up soon. And I truly believe that AI agents behind the scenes can make it so that way we can focus on the important part when it comes to relationships. And Juicebox is actually one of the people ahead of the game when it comes to AI agents. So I'm going to turn it over to David and let you roll with it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm David. I'm co-founder of Juicebox. We're the company behind PeopleGPT, and we provide AI sourcing solutions. Um, Thanks so much for having me today, and yeah, excited for the talk. My plan for this session is kind of twofold. One, showing you all kind of the potential uses of AI in a regular search, and then also showing you our brand new Juicebox agents and how they compare. And so Agentic AI has been a little bit of a buzzword recently. You may have heard it on from LinkedIn to the media to in general, not just in recruiting, but also in other places. And the way like to think about what agents are or what agentic AI is basically systems that are able to do two things. That is one, they're able to plan, so they can think a couple steps ahead. And then two, they're able to take feedback and adjust their course. And so with those two characteristics, they can make for really useful assistance, and we're able to kind of guide a system in a much more specific direction than we would be able to otherwise. That's the high level. What I'd love to show you today is first what a AI assisted workflow can look like, and then two, what a AI led workflow can look like. And so that means we'll first be going through kind of a regular search using Juicebox's autopilot, and then contrasting that with what that looks like when using a Juicebox agent instead, which can constantly work for you passively in the background. It is designed to be pretty interactive, so I'm going to try to be keeping an eye on the chat if you have any questions or things come up as we go through it too. Then if that all sounds good, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. All right, so I'm starting off on the core Juicebox platform with the search engine being the start of it. There's a few different ways to run a search on Juicebox. Our most popular approach is using a prompt. So let's say I'm looking for a software engineer in San Francisco, which is where I'm located, 5+ years of experience working at a startup, and let's say skilled in Python and Java. And so I'll start off with that and have it put together the initial version of our search. Juicebox will automatically take that natural language, convert it into a search query, gives us the option to edit filters, or if it looks good, we can just go ahead and run the search. Within a few seconds, we'll start seeing a list of profile results. Now, this initial step can still look somewhat similar to LinkedIn or say LinkedIn's AI features, where you're able to get an initial list of profiles and you can see that the AI set those initial filters. a useful starting point, but in the end still requires the user to manually go through and review them. And so what we often see is kind of some time spent clicking through these profiles and analyzing them one by one. Now, there's some ways AI can make that easier, like by providing a summary, but it really still acts as an assistant in this step. Now, we can go one step further by instead using our autopilot. And so I'm going to head over to the second tab here at the top, which is where we'll see the Juicebox autopilot come into play. The autopilot is really good at going extremely specific with different criteria and taking your natural language inputs to transforming them into a search evaluation. Now, there's already a few examples here. So, for example, being able to look for recent experience in a startup environment that are contributed to a significant project in Python or Java. Just to make this a bit more tricky, I'm going to go even more specific. I'm going to say they should have experience working on fintech solutions in a recent role. And I'm going to make that a top criteria. And we can see how that might be difficult usually. There's like a bunch of different keywords we could set, a lot of different ways we could configure that search. But instead, we can just write that out in a short sentence. I'll remove a couple other criteria, and with that, I'll start the autopilot. And so what's now happening in the background is Juicebox is going to be creating the full profile for each of those potential candidates. So we'll start those coming in, see those coming in over here. And then on the right-hand side, we already see those 4 criteria emerging. And so fintech, startup, Python, and cloud. And so in a few seconds, we'll start seeing a thumbs up or thumbs down come in for every single one of those criteria. And we already got our first 100% matches. The analogy I have for this in terms of what this human workflow would look like is if we had an assistant who was reviewing every single one of those profiles and then writing a justification for why or why not they meet the criteria we set. It's going to be pretty specific and comprehensive. At the same time, it's limited to the context that we've provided. And so if there's additional information that it might need to find the right profiles, we'll need to manually go in and give it that additional information. So let's take a look at some of those top matches. And so, for example, for Brian, worked at a firm called LP Alpha that automated aspects of private equity due diligence process. Good example where it doesn't actually include the word fintech, but clearly matches that fintech criteria or definition that we'd be looking for. We'll also see some additional reasons why they match the search, including their startup experience, Python and Java experience, and cloud technologies background. Now, as this is continuing to evaluate the profiles, that kind of wraps up our AI-assisted search approach. And so very much user-led, we get all the data, but we still have to make the decisions. We have to set those criteria. And then if we now wanted to engage these profiles, we could select them all and reach out to them using an email sequence. Now that we've kind of gone through that initial regular search process, I want to flip over and show you what that search process could look like with using an agent instead. And so to create an agent, I'm actually going to go outside of the search and head over to the projects page, which is the homepage of the Juicebox platform. From the projects page, we'll see this option to create an agent at the top. An agent essentially acts as a new project, and that's because it sources outside of your regular searches and continues doing that 24/7. And so I'll call this our SF software engineer agent because we know that's the role it's going to source for. With that, we're going to start off in a similar search environment, but everything that happens afterwards is actually going to be quite different. And so let's say we use a similar prompt, say software engineers in SF with 5+ years of experience, skilled in Python or Java, experience at a startup. And so I'll start off with that kind of broad criteria. I'll click enter. And the agent is now going to go out and think of different search strategies that it could use to configure the search. And so unlike the regular search where we just looked at, where there was only one clearly defined search approach, this can go in a lot of different directions at once and then take into account our feedback. That also means that the ways we interact with the agent are quite different. And so perhaps more similar to helping train someone else on our team, it's going to show us some example profiles that it found based on our initial input. And so I'm just going to click this review profiles button, and it's going to show us 3 examples that the system thinks could be a good fit, but we'll have to give it some feedback on whether that is actually the case. So on the left-hand side, we'll see Lori's profile over here, as well as some of the different data sources we have, including LinkedIn, GitHub, and I think that's Kaggle. We also have a couple highlights. They have early and growth stage experience and worked at both a startup and at big tech. We'll see the companies they've worked at, including a seed through Series A startup and a Series B startup earlier. And then in the middle, we see why the agent matched this profile. Experience working at a startup company and skilled in Python or Java. Now, let's say I'll approve this profile for now. We'll now head over to the second profile and get a justification for why they match as well. Just to make things a little bit trickier, I'm actually going to reject this profile. And I'm going to say I want someone who, let's take a look here. So it looks like their startup experience here is the stealth mode startup. Let's say I want someone who has experience at a Series A through C company. And then I'll say also they should not have worked at more than 2 big tech companies. So just as an example of how specific we can get in that feedback, just as we might tell a colleague. I'll click submit. It's now going to take that feedback into account, update its search, and start showing us new sets of profiles for review. And so this feedback cycle is quite iterative. We can do this up to dozens of times if we need to. And even more importantly, it learns from your feedback over time. And so as you give more feedback to the agent, you're essentially training it to fit your criteria and personalizing it more to that experience as well. So we'll now see that the criteria changed and our profile matches have changed too. And so have experience at a Series A through C company, which they have at TaskRabbit. We can just confirm that over here. So it looks like they were at TaskRabbit from 2012 to 2013, which matches that Series B through C experience, actually because TaskRabbit acquired this candidate startup previously. They've also not worked at more than 2 big tech companies, hence matching that last criteria as well. This looks good to me, so I'm going to click approve for now. We'll now see another candidate. I'll click approve here too. And a third final candidate whom I'll also approve. Now that we've approved 3 profiles in a row, we've completed that initial configuration step. And we'll move on to the action steps afterwards. And so with the Juicebox agent, there's currently 2 different conclusions you can have it do. The first one is reach out via an email sequence. And so in that case, it's directly going to contact profiles every single day. Or if we don't want it to use sequences, we can just tell it to create a shortlist instead. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use a previous sequence I've created, in this case for a backend engineer. And I'll click confirm. We can now choose how many profiles we want to reach out to every day. And so let's start off with 25. Currently, we have these options of 15, 25, 35. The reason being, in most cases, our customers use multi-step sequences. So say if you had a 4-step email sequence, adding 25 profiles a day would mean you're sending 100 emails a day. Especially if you have multiple agents, that can really add up, and we want to protect your deliverability. So in this case, I'll start off with the 25. Finally, we can choose if we want to manually approve every profile, or if we want to let the agent reach out automatically. I'll say we want to review them individually for now so that we can see what that workflow looks like. And I'll click start sourcing. We'll get some confetti as we finish that initial configuration of the agent. And the agent is now going to go out and start sourcing profiles for us. This bar will load up to 100%. It usually takes like 3 to 4 minutes. This is a live demo, so I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up taking slightly longer. But for now, I'm just going to head over to a different agent just to show you what that next step looks like. So I'll click into this agent over here. Oops, looks like that one isn't fully configured. And we'll see the mission control dashboard of the Juicebox agent. Now, this looks a little bit different than the regular search. And the reason for that is that there's kind of less way of controlling it in the regular way and more of a communication with it where you can continue giving it more feedback. And so because we chose that manual approval step, we'll see all these leads awaiting approval over here. And so right now there's 150 leads awaiting my approval before they go sent out. As they get sent out, we'll be able to track our sequence stats here, including our open rate, our reply rate, our click rate, and more. And also just keep track of all the profiles we've already contacted. I'll click into this review leads option to get started, and we'll see we're presented with this approve and send email option or reject a profile option. Because I chose the manual review, it'll ask me to do this for all 150 profiles. At this stage, it's usually pretty quick. You can kind of just click through them, approve the ones that fit your criteria, and skip the ones that don't. Alternatively, you can also switch the agent into automatic mode. And so we have this settings option at the top. And if I go in here and switch to automatic, it's going to auto approve them. So it'll be emailing those 25 profiles every single day. Now that we've taken a look at the mission control, let's take a look at the agent that we just configured and see if it's already found our matches. I think it might still be loading up, but maybe we're lucky. Oh, looks like we're at 80%, so it's almost there. And then we'll see the matches for the agent that we just created. Now that we've gone through that core initial workflow of both the regular Juicebox search as well as the Juicebox agent search, wanted to pause briefly and see if there's any questions so far. It can be about how agents work. It can be about the platform in general. Anything, I'm happy to go through it. I do have access to the chat, both the everyone chat as well as the host and panelists chat. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in there, and I'll try my best to get back to you there too. All right, so I'm seeing a question from Nadia. Is everything you are showing in the free version? So partially. If you get started for free, you'll be able to use all of the initial features we went through. That's including the search, finding profiles using the autopilot. You'll also be able to configure your first agent. However, you won't actually be able to reach out to those profiles yet because the free version has a limit on the amount of contact data we're able to provide to you. And so in this case, in the free version, I think we give you 5 contact credits to test it out. And then if it's going in the right direction or you like what you're seeing, you can start with any of our monthly plans to kind of use it further and both search further or use the agent. Now, I'll briefly pause on the questions before I get right back to the other new questions to show you the agent that we just configured, which just finished uploading in the background. So we'll see those 25 leads awaiting our approval. And if we now go back into that review stage, we'll see all the criteria that we just configured as we put together that agent, and we can approve our outreach to get in touch with them. We also still have all the other settings, including things like our open rate, tracking, etc. Now, I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat about how the agent actually reaches out to candidates. And so I'll head over to the sequences menu. The agent uses the sequences that you configured. That can include both email steps as well as LinkedIn steps. And so Juicebox sequences are pretty comprehensive. Just to show you what that looks like, I'll put together a new sequence and I'll use this template 3-step software engineer sequence. By default, this email will be, or the sequence will be delivered as 3 emails. So we can see the first step is an email delivered from my account. We'll see the email template over here saying, hi, first name, notice your experience at current company, would like to invite you to apply to a software engineering role. We can even use an AI command within the email to personalize that messaging. In this case, mentioning a brief mention of the candidate's relevant skills. We have a check-in email after 2 business days and another check-in after another 2 business days. Now, I know there were questions about LinkedIn steps. And so let's say I do an additional step and I choose either a LinkedIn connection request or a LinkedIn message. So let's say we want to do a LinkedIn message. We can use the same template configurator and it'll add that as a task for us. Now, because LinkedIn prevents automation on its platform, the way we handle this is we will create a task for you to then execute on LinkedIn. And so once it's time to send that LinkedIn message, it will send you an email notification, but also show you on the projects page over here. And so you can see I have 3 LinkedIn tasks remaining, and I can briefly see what those look like. So one, I need to send a LinkedIn message. So I can click execute task. It'll open up LinkedIn and I can paste in that message, but also a connection request and another connection request. So we try to make it as easy as possible while still complying with all of LinkedIn's terms, so that you can use both emails as well as LinkedIn messages for your outreach. Now I'm seeing a few more questions. So sorry, I'm just gonna briefly read through so that I can hopefully answer a few together. I see one question around adding diversity into searches. So yes, we have a bunch of different options for adding diversity in searches. Let me just show you what that looks like on our regular search page. And so again, in our regular search configurator, we can go into edit filters and we'll see our different power filters. And so there's a specific list of diversity fields that we have over here, as well as additional power filters, including career growth, achievements, security clearance data, and more. Next up, where do the profiles come from? Also, great question. So profiles come from over 30 different data sources. We'll show some of them within the profiles. So if we take a look at Andrew's profile here, we might see the regular experiences, which is more akin to LinkedIn. But if we scroll down, we'll see some data like their funding data, which comes from our global search on company data, or their GitHub profile, where we're able to pull in some additional skills and repos from those sources as well. Sorry, a lot of questions happening at once now. The how many steps for LinkedIn messages to go through? So not 100% sure on that question. We do allow you to do up to 10 steps in a sequence. So you can do, I guess, up to 10 LinkedIn messages, or what we see more commonly, a combination of email and LinkedIn. And so as an example, let's say you were to put together a sequence here where I'll continue the one we just created. We have 3 email steps. Then we throw in a LinkedIn message step. And then we could add in another 2 email steps afterwards, checking in, say, a week later or 2 weeks later. One of the strategies we've seen be most effective is if you split your outreach almost into 2 batches. And so you do a first batch of outreach where you say email 1 and then a check-in after 2 days. Then you wait 2 weeks and then you do another 2 emails saying, hey, just came across your profile again, wanted to touch base or check in. Can actually lead to a pretty big boost in response rate. What's also cool about Juicebox is you can actually then track that data. So we'll show you pretty detailed email analytics. And so if I click into this View Analytics tab up here, it'll actually show me, not just how my sequences have performed overall, but specifically which step of my email sequence is actually getting the replies, what does my conversion look like, and more. So just letting those charts load in over here. If we now scroll down to the replies by sequence step, we'll see looks like we're getting most replies on the first step. And the dark blue here signifies that they're interested replies. So even more importantly, the majority of the interested replies are coming in through my early email steps, and then that kind of drops off over time. Now, one stat that's less intuitive on this example account is a lot of the interested replies actually come over 5 days from my initial email sent. And so that again kind of speaks to that having those longer email sequences so that you can still capture interested responses, even if it's a while after your initial outreach. Then, oh, sorry, Benjamin, do you have a question?
I was going to say there are a few questions in the Q&A, and for everybody in the chat, it might be easier for him to go through the Q&A questions just so we don't lose them when somebody else drops a new question in.
Oops, sorry about that. I think I incorrectly guided to the chat.
Oh, all good, all
Um,
good.
Alrighty, then I'll kind of transition over to the Q&A questions. So one question around pricing. I'll briefly pull that up because it's quite transparent. So let me just pull up our pricing options. So we have 3 different plans. Our starter plan is $79 a month when billed annually, or $99 a month when billed monthly. That includes 250 contact credits. Next up, we have our growth plan. That's $149 a month I'd say the biggest differences are this includes talent insights, which I can show in a moment as well as 750 contact credits, so you can do significantly more outreach. It also lets you collaborate with your team. So if I were to add 2 seats, we'd be able to do that on this plan as well. Now, for both of these plans, we actually have a special discount for the Rock the Year Summit. And so the discount code is ROCK20. It'll give you 20% off. And I'll follow up with an email, or I'm not sure if we already sent that out, but either way, we will follow up with an email including the Rock the Year discount code so you can get 20% off any plan. Finally, we have the business plan option. This is best for larger teams. It gets you unlimited contact credits, as well as some additional usage analytics, role-based access, and more in-depth CRM and ATS integrations. Then I'm seeing a question for a search outside of software engineering, specifically for mechanical engineering or commercial construction. Let's do it. I'll do a quick one for this, but Juicebox works across domains. So let's say I want a mechanical engineer in, I'll just do San Francisco to keep it consistent, 5+ years of experience. And I'll start off with that as our initial search. It'll put that together. We can refine the job titles as well. So let's take a look at what I put together here. It added in project engineer, design engineer. If those are going in the right direction, we can just hit save and run search to get started. Then while that search is running, let's take a look at some additional questions. Is it used for candidate sourcing only, or can we use it for client outreach too? Juicebox and PeopleGPT is designed for candidate sourcing. So everything in terms of finding and reaching out to candidates. We do have some customers that use us for some client outreach too. We do have professional emails, though I will flag the platform kind of isn't designed for it. So you might run into some issues here and there, especially if you're looking to do really large scale outreach to clients. Then just to briefly wrap up that mechanical engineer search. So we'll start seeing some profile matches here for a mechanical engineer. For example, Irfan, senior staff mechanical engineer at Dymoc. And if we now wanted to refine the search further, we could go back into that autopilot, and it already suggests some criteria like experience with CAD software, sustainable or energy efficient designs, just as examples. And so if we were now to go ahead and start that autopilot, it'll give us that same assessment of all these profiles using the autopilot to refine it even further. Next question, is the free version 5 leads a day? So right now, the free version lets you do a number of searches. I think you can see up to 75 profiles, but then you can only get the contact info for 5 profiles. That's 5 profiles per month. So just to test our contact info. Does it hook up with HubSpot? Yes, we do. So I'm going to head over to our integrations menu, and we have over 40 different ATS as well as CRM integrations. So I'd say ATS integrations in particular, we have quite a variety. And then on the CRM side, we have a smaller collection, including Affinity, HubSpot, and Salesforce. Then question from Christina, we're using Talen AI. Would this replace that for email and LinkedIn outreach? Does this integrate into our CRM? I'm not familiar with Talen AI, so I can't speak to that. That being said, using both email and LinkedIn outreach, both are things that we support. And then does this integrate into Loxo? We currently don't have a Loxo integration. That being said, that's hopefully something that'll come soon as well. Are there barriers with the LinkedIn integration? I find that some tools do not play well with LinkedIn. Also, do you have any data that proves use case for folks using this in place of LinkedIn recruiters successfully? So we have over 1,000 customers. That includes both customers in the US as well as globally. In some cases, they use us in combination with LinkedIn Recruiter. In other cases, they use us as their primary or only sourcing solution. So it depends a little bit on your use case. We're happy to consult you on that as well. We do offer kind of live demos and have a sales team that can guide you through that process too as you kind of think about your tech stack and solutions. So I don't want to give like a blanket answer because I do think it will depend on your specific use case. In terms of playing well with LinkedIn, we've intentionally set it up to be extremely compliant with all of LinkedIn's terms. And so you'll be able to track all your stats, manage your outreach, and more while making sure your LinkedIn account is safe as well. And then I'm getting a question from Thomas. It looks like it requires you to pay for additional agents. Yes, that is the case. So agents are kind of an add-on depending on how many you want to use. That being said, we have free trials available of the agents as well. So if you want to test them out for a week or a little bit longer than that, just let us know and we're happy to get you set up on the agent trial for free as well. And I'll make a note that we follow up with you as well, Thomas. Then at this point, would Juicebox be a better tool than LinkedIn Recruiter for those of us who are working on our own? My answer, and of course I'm biased, is I hope so. That being said, the only way you'll be able to kind of find out for yourself is by testing it out. And that's exactly what we have our free trial for as well. So hopefully you can get a feeling for whether it's a solution that could solve for your use case and provide the relevant search results. I'm seeing a question around pricing of agents. Currently, agents are priced as $300 for 2 agents with unlimited usage. So you can use those 2 agents 24/7 with any volume of contacts. That includes all contact credits and exports of those agents. And so that's the current structure for the agents. However, you have your 20% Rock the Year discount code that will also apply onto the agents. So that'll give you an additional 20% off. Question from Sarah. How does this compare to Fetra AI? Not super familiar with Fetra AI, so I can't speak to other products, unfortunately. That being said, I'll just reiterate our free trial to test that out directly. Then $300 annually or per month for agents. That is per month, though there is an annual option that gives you some additional discounts too. And then finally, I see a question from Ross regarding I think the search that we just set up, if I recall correctly, the mechanical engineer. And so the question is to add something more specific like metals or plastic injection molding. So let's try that out. So I'm just going to add it as a criteria here. Experience with metals or plastic injection molding. Now, to be honest, I should have probably added this in the beginning because then the search would have kind of focused on that from the starting point. So we might still be able to add it at this point too. So I just added a new criteria. We'll see that new column generate over here. And now for that new column, we're also going to get a thumbs up and thumbs down. And so we'll see, hopefully there's some profiles that match that metals or plastic injection molding as well. Give that a couple seconds to load in. And then just while that's loading in, I see a question in the general chat around sharing the software engineer and SF search. So I'll briefly pull that up again and just share the search. So this is the search we ran together for software engineers and SF. We actually have this share search feature, so I'm just going to put that in the chat as well if anyone wants to use that as a starting point or configure it further. So here we go. Let me head back to that mechanical engineer search. So we already see some profiles matching over here. So let's take a look at Nate, for example. Has experience with plastic injection molding, as mentioned in his roles at Function Engineering and at Raytheon. And so we can start clicking into a few more profiles that meet all those criteria, such as Thomas at Skyline Solar, where he led the design of an injection molding junction box for high reliability, as well as some other profiles, and we'll see the relevant justifications. In this case, actually also working with sheet metals, so some of that metals experience as well. Ross, I hope that's going in the direction of what you're looking for. If not, let me know and I can see if I can tune that further. Great question from Thomas. Would you mind explaining the point that the agents take over, what the difference is having the agents versus not having them? So I'd say the biggest difference is that the agents, they will just work kind of 24/7 once you've configured them. So you can think of them as doing that outreach every day, say reaching out to 25 or 35 new profiles every day while getting a better understanding of what you're actually looking for, what are your specific search criteria, how can those be configured further compared to the regular search where it's a lot more driven by your actual actions. And so to, reach out to an additional set of profiles, you'll have to go and configure the search, identify the profiles and add them into an email sequence. The agent in comparison will be doing this autonomously every day and kind of working in conjunction. It also knows what you're doing in the regular platform. So if you've already reached out to someone in the meantime, the agent will be sure not to also reach out to that person. So it has an understanding of what you're doing and kind of continues its own workflow on the side. What we've seen our customers do in some cases is they set up, say, 4 or 5 different agents while also running their own search. So every day they're sending out, 100, 150 new outreach messages using the agent, and then say another curated 20 or so that they're doing personally. That can really scale up the amount of roles that you're able to work on at once. So going back to what Benjamin mentioned in the beginning, of single person $1 million recruiter, I think agents can be a really effective way to do that because you're basically taking care of those roles on autopilot or with having to put in a lot less work on the day to day. Then I'm seeing a couple more questions around search criteria, including one here from Anahat. Oops, sorry, my tab just moved away. Can we add a search criteria? If a candidate is willing to relocate or work on a remote site, can they pick this information by analyzing their previous experience? Yes. So 2 ways we can do that. One, we can set specific past locations if they should have been in a specific spot. And then the other is we can add that as a criteria in the autopilot. So you could say something like has worked as part of a remote team or has worked on a remote site, depending on the specific role or industry that you're looking at. Then I see iCIMS as a requested ATS integration. Yes, we have an iCIMS integration. If it's not showing on the integrations page, though, I think it should. We do have that for sure, though. So you can otherwise contact your Juicebox representative and we'll help you get that set up. Let's see if it's showing over here. Yeah, so it looks like it doesn't show it directly on the marketplace, but we do have an iCIMS integration. So if you need that set up, just let us know. What methods does the tool use to keep your email safe from getting thrown into the spam folder? Great question. So we do as much as we can. That being said, the biggest thing about your kind of spam deliverability rate is one, whether people report you as spam, and two, the volume of emails you're sending out. We do a few different things to protect you. One, you can connect multiple different mailboxes. This is highly recommended if you're sending a large volume of emails, because then you can set a limit of how many emails you will send out per day from each mailbox. And so the more mailboxes you have, the lower you can make that limit. So let's say you have 5 different mailboxes, you set that to 50 emails each, then you're sending out 250 emails a day with a pretty low spam risk unless you're being reported for spam. There's some additional things that we do, and I'll just pull those up over here as well. So one, we run email verification on every profile that you reach out to. So you'll only be able to reach out to verified email addresses. We space out emails on 120-second intervals, so it's going to have a minimum of a 2-minute gap between each email that it sends. And then finally, those configurable limits, by default, they're set to 100 per day per mailbox, though you can increase those or decrease it further if you'd like to. Just to show you how that's done as well, if I'm in my mailbox settings over here, I can just click edit and then choose what that max limit should be. Finally, I can also head over into my settings and choose email strict mode. So if I go into mailbox preferences, we'll see this option over here, email strict mode. This will only use 100% verified email addresses. So if you have that activated, coverage might be a little bit lower, but you're going to have essentially a 0% bounce rate. All right, then just in the interest of time, since we're kind of coming up at the end of the 45-minute slot, a couple final questions I'll go through. Um, so I'm just seeing in the chat there's some as well. A quick one, does this connect with Bullhorn? Yes, we do, one of our most common integrations. Um, and then Sharifa asking about the email limit. So the limit is just from the integrations page, max emails per day. And then on the right-hand side, we have that edit button. So right next to disconnect, I just have to move my tab here slightly. We'll have that edit icon. And so that's where you can edit your email limit. And then final question of the day. Um, You mentioned this can replace LinkedIn Recruiter is the same to replace LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Again, depends a little bit on your use case. If you're using LinkedIn Sales Navigator for a recruiting use case, we may be a good solution for you, especially in terms of the depth of the search and some of the AI capabilities we provide. If you're using LinkedIn Sales Nav for primarily a sales use case, then we might not be the best solution for your needs because we are a recruiting focused platform, not a sales focused platform. All right, I think that largely wraps up the questions and chat. If there are additional questions, please feel free to reach out to our team or me directly. I'm going to put my direct email into the chat as well, and I'll try my best to get back to any questions that way too. There we go. And yeah, thanks all so much for attending and for going through the Juicebox agents as well as our regular Juicebox search platform with me.
Got a lot of positive feedback on the back end. So this is definitely, it's you got the mystified of what like we talk about what is actually happening and or talk about what could happen, and now we're seeing the reality of what's happening with AI agents and how it can work behind the scenes. That way you can keep on recruiting. So excited that you guys shared, David, and definitely thank you guys for being a presenting sponsor. Definitely make sure to check out Juicebox. It's actually one of my favorite tools when it comes to recruiting. And he didn't talk about this, but I'm in the cleared GovCon space, and they actually do some stuff with the security clearance searches too. So, it's not just, he's in the software world, but there's so many different things that Juicebox does. I think the craziest search that you mentioned one time was like people working on, was it cruise ships or like private
Yeah.
ships or something?
Yeah, we've had some funny searches. It's always really cool. I think it was one of my favorite things is learning about all the different roles that people recruit for.
So, but once again, make sure you connect or follow David on LinkedIn. And I know this is going to be an awesome week. We have something like 23 more talks for the entire week. So it's power packed, and definitely check this out on the replays. Okay. See you guys soon.
Thank you. See you.